It started with that sound again. The one that doesn't belong in this apartment. It isn't loud, it isn't obvious, but it slices through the noise of the world like a whisper across glass. A little click, like a fingernail pressing too softly against metal. Most nights, I could convince myself it was pipes settling in the walls, or the neighbors bumping into something on their side. But not tonight. Tonight I was alone, absolutely alone, until that sound started up again. I had been halfway through a late-night video binge, slouched deeper into the couch cushions, letting the glow of my laptop wash over me. The city outside was alive with its usual drone, cars thumping over potholes, sirens somewhere distant, someone having a loud argument 2 streets down. All of that was expected. I live here, and chaos is the wallpaper of urban life. But then came the little noise, too deliberate, too close. It was coming from the hallway. My hallway, not outside my door. That's where the dread began stirring. That static prickle rolling up the back of my neck as if my own skin wanted to escape my body. I muted what I was watching and held my breath. The silence pressed in, heavy and thick. Then another click. Not random this time. 2 clicks, nearly back to back. Like a signal. Have you ever noticed how fear shifts the entire balance of your body? Like suddenly you're aware of your heart as a real, loud object trying to punch its way free through your ribs. My hands were clammy around the remote. I realized how pathetically thin my apartment door was. I realized how empty this place suddenly felt. I told myself I had options. I could laugh it off, keep watching my show with headphones, and brush it away as city noises. Or I could walk that 10 feet of hallway to prove to myself there was nothing there. 2 choices, deny it or confront it. I confronted. The hallway in my place isn't long. But when every nerve in your body believes something is waiting for you in the dark, it stretches into infinity. My bare feet met the cool vinyl floor. The air felt different, heavier, as if someone had peeled back a layer of safety. I flicked the light switch. The bulb hummed, filling the hall in pale yellow light. Clean floor. Shoes in the corner. The bedroom doors cracked open. Bathroom closed. Nothing, and then I heard it again, but not in the hallway. This me, it came from the living room I had just walked away from. Click. I froze. My body refused to turn back, refused to even breathe. I didn't want to move. I didn't want to see, but eventually, instinct dragged my neck sideways, forcing my eyes back toward the couch, the laptop still glowing faint blue in the dark, and I swear to you, I am not exaggerating. There was someone sitting there just long enough to know I'd seen it. A shape, too human, too still. Shadows bent wrong across its shoulders, then gone. I inked, and the couch was empty. A laptop is playing its looping screen. Panic isn't always screaming. Panic is sometimes so crushingly silent that you feel your whole body become raw static. I didn't scream. I didn't move. I just stood there like an idiot in my dimly lit hallway, trying to will my brain back into functioning. But then came a voice. Not from outside. Not from the hallway. Not even from my apartment. From inside me. You think you're alone right now, it said. Plain and clipped, but you're not. I didn't hear those words with my ears. I felt them, like when your stomach drops in an elevator, or your heartbeat thunders so loud it writes thoughts into your skull. And then it laughed. Not out loud, just through me. I stumbled backward into the little wall near my bedroom. My hand scraped against the trim. I wanted the comfort of my phone, the clear light of that screen, the better lie of digital distraction. But the phone was still on the couch, near where, no, what, I had just seen sitting there. I needed air. I lunged for my front door, twisted the deadbolt, and yanked it open into the cool corridor outside. Motion sensor lights blinked to life, buzzing irritably, painting the hall in harsh fluorescence. Empty, sterile, heavier with silence than I wanted it to be. I should have felt relieved, but the strange thing about stepping into safety is that it underscores just how unsafe you felt inside. The contrast is too sure. It makes everything worse. Like sucking cold air after nearly drowning. It only proves you were almost gone, and standing in that blank hallway, I realized something scarier. There were small scratches around my apartment door frame. Fresh, uneven. The kind of scratches made by something trying to get in, or get out. That's when my neighbor's TV upstairs clicked on. Too loud, too sudden. Just some sitcom rerun with a laugh track. But I jumped half a foot high. I decided I couldn't stay out there. I couldn't stand exposed in the sterile light while my home, and whatever else, sat open behind me. So I stepped back inside and pushed the door shut, forcing the deadbolt back into place. Two things struck me immediately. First, the smell. My apartment didn't smell like this when I left seconds before. There was something sharper now, metallic, faintly sweet. The smell of pennies dipped in sugar. Second, there was breathing. Slow. Careful, not mine. It came from the kitchen. I didn't want to look, but some sick compulsion pulls us closer to what terrifies us. The same way people stare at car crashes or watch horror movies with their hands half covering their faces. I stepped forward, heart jackhammering. My throat is dry as sand. Leaning over the corner, I peeked into the kitchen. The fridge door was wide open, every light inside it spilling into the room and on the floor. By the scattered glow was a handprint smeared in something dark. I stood frozen. Shadows seemed to waver in corners. My own breath sounded too loud, like I was broadcasting my location. The fridge light flickered once, and then, with it, every bulb in the apartment went black. I was swallowed into silence, and in the dark, there was a shape, no longer pretending, not across the room, not in another doorway. No, this time it was inches away, leaning close enough that I could feel the air shift as it spoke again. You're not alone. I don't remember deciding to move. I don't even remember breathing. One moment, that voice brushed the inside of my skull, too close, too absolute. The next, my body tore itself sideways across the living room, smashing my shin on the coffee table as I clawed into the bedroom. I slammed the door and pressed my back against it like a child hiding from monsters. The thing about fear is that you don't really know yourself until it locks you in. I'd always imagined I'd be the fighter, someone who wouldn't freeze, who wouldn't cower. But pressed against that flimsy wood with my heart thundering so loud it made my jaw ache. I knew the truth. I was prey. I fumbled clumsily against the nightstand in the dark, throwing down books, a bottle of water, my keys, searching with urgent, scraping hands until finally my fingers brushed cold glass. My spare phone charger. The actual phone was still in the living room. That realization hit me like a punch. Every lifeline to the outside world sat abandoned right where it stood, waiting. Whoever or whatever that whispered presence was, it stood between me and rescue, The bedroom reeked faintly of dust and stale laundry layered over that metallic sweetness, as if the air vent itself was bleeding iron. I pressed my weight harder against the back of the door, straining my ears for sound. The apartment was silent, horribly silent, which, somehow, was worse. I wanted sound, proof of movement, something to measure. Nothingness meant it could be anywhere. Maybe crouching silently an inch from the other side of the door, maybe crawling beneath the bed in total stillness. In silence, every shadow, every possibility bloomed too large to contain. I squeezed shut my eyes, held my hands against my face, tried to will some sense of clarity back into this fractured nightmare. That was when I heard a laugh, muffled, strained, unmistakably human, echoing faintly through the wall. But it wasn't coming from the apartment. It came from the other side, the neighbor's unit, the same wall my bed was pressed against. I froze, ear tilted toward the drywall, just barely catching the cadence of it. Another voice joined in, calm, low, deliberate, like someone telling a bedtime story. No words came clearly, just the rhythm. Joke, laughter, joke, laughter. I don't know why that terrifies me more than footsteps in the hallway, but it does. The thought of voices meant for each other but pressed paper-thin against me, as though they'd known all along I'd be listening. Suddenly, banged on my head, snapped toward the bedroom door as something slammed against it hard enough to rattle the hinges. I shouted, jerking backward, my body slamming into the side of the mattress, tripping down onto the floor. Again, bang, louder this time, timed like a knock, but violent, too forceful. Something wanted in. At that moment, instinct yanked me under the bed. I didn't think it through. I didn't weigh the cowardice. I just slid across the hardwood into the close darkness beneath the frame. There, pressed against old sneakers and fallen receipts, I hid. Shadows flickered across the tiny line of light beneath the door. A hand, no, the outline of fingers, slowly stretched down to wiggle against the floor. Testing, searching, curling claws, invisible but heavily implied. I shoved both fists to my mouth to smother breathing. My chest convulsed with the effort of silence. Then, stillness. Whatever was outside didn't pound again, didn't rattle the knob. It only knelt. I could see faint shadows shifting against that sliver of light. Ahead, maybe. Listening, I stayed there what felt like hours, though later I realized by the clock it could scarcely have been 5 minutes. My arms cramped, my lungs burned, but I dared not move. I dared not flinch. And then, like a cruel trick, the sound of my own phone's ringtone exploded from the living room. That bright, nostalgic melody. Someone was calling me. My chest tightened with a twisted, impossible decision. If I stayed under the bed, I had to pray the caller would assume I was asleep and hang up. But if that sound lured it away, even for a second, I could make a run for it. The clumsy, desperate logic of fear made my decision for me. I crawled out, every joint screaming quiet protests, and stumbled toward the bedroom window. 5th floor, fire escape just below. A narrow chance. Behind me, the pounding began again. Furious this time. Almost gleeful. I yanked the curtains aside with frantic hands, unlocked the window, and heaved it upward. Cold night air rushed in and bit my cheeks. Below, the fire escape ladder looked rusted, questionable, but alive with possibility. As I swung one leg outside, balanced desperately with palms on the frame, the bedroom door finally caved. The echo of wood breaking and hinges shrieking filled the apartment. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I climbed down into the night. The alley felt tighter than I remembered. Walls leaning closer, dumpsters crouched like shadowed beasts. My bare feet slapped the metal railing as I fell the last half-meter to the ground. My instinct screamed at me to run. But some part of me, some dumb, self-preserving, turned my eyes upward for one last glance at the broken bedroom window. A face looked down. It wasn't mine. That was when the phone in my pocket. Vibrated. I didn't even think. I had forgotten this backup. Phone had service at all. I fumbled it up to my ear with shaking hands. No thought of caller ID. Just frantic hope someone had reeled me out of the nightmare in real time. A voice answered, calm and my own. You think you're alone right now, it whispered. But you're not. The call ended. I dropped the phone. Literally dropped it right there in filthy rainwater pooled beside the dumpster. The world spun sideways for a second, too unreal to believe. Lights buzzed above me. Neon. The glow of the city curb beyond the alley felt like salvation, but also another trap waiting. Every corner, every shadow could hold eyes. I stumbled forward on aching legs, aiming for that glow, desperate for the noise of cars, desperate for people. When I reached the street, I almost wept with relief at the sight of life still moving, a cab cruising, headlights yawning. But then I noticed something worse. Every person walking down that street turned their head in unison to look at me. All at once. Dozens of eyes caught my figure, tracking me deliberately. Not startled, not curious, just watching. And not one single mouth moved. They stood in silence, illuminated by amber streetlights, their faces slightly wrong, too long in the jaw, too pale in the eyes. Every one of them stared, and as my breath caught in ragged sobs, they whispered together, perfectly synchronized, not to me but through me. You're not alone, I ran. Not at first, because my legs wouldn't work, frozen by that wall of eyes, but then one of them blinked too slowly, a kind of synchronized shutter, and the spell snapped. My body chose survival. My feet slapped pavement hard enough to sting. The street blurred in streaks of light. Neon washed together. I cut across a crosswalk against the light, horns blaring, engines roaring past. I almost prayed one of those cars would hit me and knock me out of this nightmare. But it wasn't a dream. The real world had seams now. Stitches unraveling one by one. I sprinted into the glow of a convenience store, slamming the glass door open so hard it rattled against the stopper. Harsh white light. Music humming above racks of potato chips. A sleepy cashier leaning on the counter beside a lottery screen. I collapsed against an aisle, clutching my ribs, gasping like a fish. My lungs burned, my blood hummed like electricity. I wanted people. I wanted stories. I wanted anything normal. But the cashier looked up from his monitor with that same tore-round gaze, watching, not surprised. Not angry, just staring. And then, without breaking eye contact, he whispered, "You're not alone." My knees buckled. "Please, don't," I stammered. "Don't say that. Don't." He cut me off by pointing toward the security camera. Grainy grey lens above the corner. I dared to look. The screen showed the usual angle. Empty aisles. Me by the chips. Him at the counter. But in the static shadow between us, there was someone else. Another person was standing, halfway down the aisle, with their face bent toward me like they were inhaling me through the pixels. I turned. Nothing there, just bright white light and a sticky floor. But the camera insisted otherwise. A frozen figure in that blind spot, shoulders rising and falling like breath. I bolted, grabbing the payphone on the wall near the door with shaking hands. My knuckles went white over the receiver. I jammed 3/4 into the slot without caring who I'd call. 911, my mother, a random, wrong number. Anything human except when I put the receiver to my ear. There was already someone speaking. "You shouldn't have left the apartment," my voice said. "Not theirs, mine. We'd have taken care of you. Now they're watching from everywhere." I screamed into the receiver, leaning hard enough on the booth to shake it. "What the hell do you want from me?" Static hissed back at me, then laughter, not menacing, not cruel, just casual, as if it knew this was inevitable. Then the dial tone dropped into a low hum. I slammed the phone back into the cradle hard enough to splinter plastic. When I looked, the cashier was gone. No movement, no footsteps, just an empty counter. Items still scattered where he'd been leaning, but no person. The sliding doors behind me opened with their cheery little motion sensor chime. A woman in a blue coat strolled in. Her steps were normal. Her face looked normal. Her heels clicked against the tile floor. Relief poured through me faster than the adrenaline. "Hey," I gasped, rushing toward her, seizing her arm like a desperate child. "Hey, you can see me, right? You're real? Please, listen, I think I'm going insane. But something's in my apartment. Something's here. Everyone keeps." She turned her head slowly, lips parting just slightly, and in perfect synchronization with the buzzing hum of the overhead light. She whispered, "You're not alone." I shoved her away and stumbled out into the night again. The city no longer felt like the place I knew. The noises had thinned. The air was tighter, sluggish, suffocating. Every person who passed me glanced at me for too long. Like an actor breaking character mid-play, somewhere between laughing and sobbing, I found myself running again. I wasn't even sure where my body wanted me to go. Safety was abstract now, meaningless. There was no escaping something everywhere, but muscle memory guided me, weaving block after block until my eyes lifted up and saw the grimy mural painted across the brick of St. Doyle's. The old church I'd passed 1,000 times without acknowledgement. There was nowhere left, so I shoved open the heavy wood doors and stumbled inside. The air was cool, heavy with incense residue. The pews stretched in solemn symmetry, candles flickering at the far altar. My whole body sagged as I let the doors close behind me. At least here, I thought. At least here. But then I realized there was someone already sitting in the front pew, his shoulders hunched, hands folded. He turned his head slowly, as though every second of movement carried weight. His eyes caught me with unsettling calm, lost. He asked, tears gathered so quickly in my eyes that it felt like my vision steamed. Finally, someone who spoke regularly, not whispering that phrase like it was downloaded into them. Double quotes. "Yes," I croaked. "Yes, please, listen. I don't know what's happening. People, things, they keep." He raised one trembling hand. "You don't have to explain." "I know." I blinked at him, throat closing. You know. "They found you," he said softly. "They always find us, eventually." My stomach dropped entirely into ice. "What are you talking about?" Slow as rust, he lifted his hand and pulled down the collar of his shirt. On the side of his neck were blackened bruises shaped like fingerprints, as though someone had held him too tightly for too long. "You don't think you're the first, do you?" he whispered. The flames in the little votive candles flickered as though under sudden breath. The shadows peeled long against the vaulted ceiling. My knees locked. "Please, I can't do this. I can't. You think you're alone right now," the old man murmured, staring not at me but through me, as though someone stood right behind my shoulder. "But you're not." I froze, stiff, couldn't even twitch my head. The heat of breath that wasn't mine ignited the hair on the back of my neck. When I finally snapped and spun around, the aisle was empty. Just shadows and flowers, and the door closed tight behind me. I staggered backwards so abruptly, I nearly toppled into the pews. When I whipped back to face the old man again, the bench was empty. He was gone, but the candles still flickered like he'd breathed through them on his way out.